Welcome to the Heart Sutra online course. My name is Jianhu Shifu. I'm the Dharma teacher of this course. Before we start, we will recite the sutra opening verse together. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million kalpas. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. Okay. So that verse put us in the right frame of mind to study a Buddhist scripture. Basically, it says that it is very rare that we can encounter this precious teaching of the Buddha. So we should cherish this opportunity, feel blessed, and we should focus and sincerely try to understand what the Buddha tried to teach us. Tathagata is another name for the Buddha. So, first of all, why should we be interested in the Heart Sutra? Why shall I study this sutra? A sutra is a Buddhist scripture. The Heart Sutra is actually the shortened name. Its full name is the Heart of Prajnaparamita Sutra. Prajnaparamita can be translated as the perfection of wisdom. So what is this Heart Sutra about? Well, it is about happiness, finding real, satisfying happiness. However, in everybody's life, we do have plenty of challenges, things that happen that we don't like, dissatisfaction, suffering. So we may not know how to deal with them. So the Heart Sutra teaches how to deal with these suffering, or in Indian word is called dukkha. Dukkha means any kind of suffering, small or large. It could be physical, it could be mental. It could be coming from the environment, could be coming from other people. Any kind of thing that or situation that make your life miserable or not satisfactory is dukkha. The opposite of dukkha is sukha. Sukha is happiness. Sukha is joy. Sukha is bliss. So we would like to go from dukkha to sukha. So these are the things that the Heart Sutra deal with. But how do we go from dukkha to sukha? Everybody have had suffering or unhappy things happening. Do I know how to deal with them? How do I learn to deal with them? How do I learn to deal with these unhappy things, which I may or may not be able to expect? How do I turn my life around so that I can find true happiness? What is true happiness? These are certainly important issues in everyone's life. And the Heart Sutra will give us insight, deep insight into these issues. Now, to go from dukkha to sukha, from unhappiness to happiness, we need something. That something, a tool, is called wisdom, or specifically prajna wisdom. Prajna wisdom is the type of wisdom we'll need to deal with dukkha and to find true, real happiness. Now, the Heart Sutra ultimately also deal with liberation. Liberation, what is liberation? To be free from all unhappiness, to attain the ultimate happiness, to be truly free. So that is also an important topic that the Heart Sutra will teach us how to attain liberation. Now, so that is a very brief introduction to what the Heart Sutra is about. The Heart Sutra is actually a very short text, but it contains a great wealth of information, a great wealth of wisdom that Shifu believes will help everyone who is willing to learn the insights that is contained within the Heart Sutra. So, first of all, what is a sutra? A sutra is an Indian word, it's a Sanskrit word. It means a teaching of the Buddha, or a teaching given by a disciple of the Buddha that is affirmed as correct teaching by the Buddha. So the Heart Sutra is one such teaching. Now, so the sutra contains what is called a Dharma teaching. I'm a Dharma teacher. The Dharma is the teaching of the Buddha. It can mean knowledge, a principle, a teaching. So in the Buddhist context, Buddha Dharma is the teaching within Buddhism. And a sutra, it is a form that the Dharma is presented. During the Buddhist time, it is only presented verbally. So in order to learn a teaching, learn a Dharma teaching, the Buddha's disciples have to memorize it. Later on, it is recorded in words. So when we look at the text, it is also a sutra. It contains the Dharma. What kind of Dharma? What kind of teaching? The teaching about prajna, paramita. So prajna is wisdom. Paramita is also an Indian word, a Sanskrit word. It means, oh, something is completed. So when in ancient India, when people finish something, they may say, paramita, it's finished, it's done, it's completed. So Buddha took that word and applied into his teaching. Prajna paramita then means the perfection of wisdom. Now, this is interesting. We all have some idea of what wisdom is, but what does it mean to say the perfection of wisdom? How can there be a perfection of wisdom? Well, we will explain during the course of this Heart Sutra. Now, the Heart Sutra is a Prajna Paramita Sutra. It is a teaching on the perfection of wisdom. And we do believe that everyone can attain the perfection of wisdom. And the purpose of that wisdom is, like we just said, to go from dukkha to sukha, from suffering to ultimate happiness. Now, the Prajna Paramita is actually a very large body of text, a large body of teaching. Some of the Prajna Paramita Sutra can be hundreds of thousands of lines long. Now, so the Heart Sutra, or the heart of Prajna Paramita Sutra, is the essence of the Prajna literature. That's what the heart in the name, in the title means. The heart of the perfection of wisdom sutra. So we're learning the very essence of what this wisdom is about. So that was a brief introduction to what the Heart Sutra is about. Now, let us look at the first line in the Heart Sutra. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, while deeply immersed in Prajna Paramita, clearly perceived the empty nature of the five skandhas and transcended of suffering. Now, Bodhisattva is a person, somebody who is very advanced in the Buddhist practice, and somebody who has a great compassion, wanting to help bring all living beings, sentient beings, to freedom, to happiness, to liberation. And Avalokiteshvara is one particularly important and popular bodhisattva in the Buddhist world. So it begins by saying this bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he is deeply immersed in the practice of Prajna Paramita, in the perfection of wisdom. And because of that, this bodhisattva was able to clearly perceive, understand something. What is that something? The empty nature of the five skandhas. The five skandhas we will explain in detail. But for now, we can think of it as our body and mind. The five skandhas, or five aggregates, are form, feeling, conception, volition, and consciousness. That is the body and our mental activities. So what this is saying is that I, as a person with body and mind, is empty in nature. Now that sounds strange, or maybe a little bit mystifying. What do you mean we are empty? We are empty in nature. Well, it turned out to be a very, very powerful teaching. It doesn't mean that we are denying who we are. No, it does mean we will penetrate, we will need to penetrate into the true nature of who we are. I think at one time or another, every person may have thought, who am I? What is the meaning of life? Why am I here? What is my purpose in life? So this prajna, wisdom, get to the very heart of this, the very core of what is our nature. Now, Buddha says, or Avalokiteshvara says that this nature is emptiness. That may sound passive, but it is not. It's actually very liberating. And once we understand the empty nature of who we are able to transcend our suffering. So we talk about going from dukkha to sukha, from unhappiness to happiness, The tool we need is prajna wisdom. The wisdom is the insight into the empty nature of our body and mind, the empty nature of the self. So we haven't explained anything about what all this means, but we shall understand that this first sentence, this first line, is the core of the Heart Sutra. All of the teaching in the Heart Sutra is contained in this one single sentence already. But of course, this, for those who are not familiar with the Prajnaparamita teaching, this sounds like a secret code. What is it saying? So we will need to explain. Now, let me begin by explaining the three modes of wisdom. The three modes of wisdom is wisdom from listening, wisdom from contemplation, and wisdom from cultivation. Listening, as you are listening right now, you listen to a talk and you learn something. When you correctly understand what is being taught, that is called the wisdom from listening. Now, during the Buddha's time, all the teaching was given orally. Of course, today, we learn a lot of things from text, from a book, even from a video, right? So all of that would be similar. They would be just called wisdom from listening or wisdom from learning or reading. That's the first type of wisdom. We can gain wisdom this way, by listening, by reading. But once we understand something, that becomes knowledge, right, for us. But how deeply do I understand this knowledge? How deeply do I grasp the message? How deeply do I really know how to use this principle? Well, that requires the second mode of wisdom, or shall we say the second mode of acquiring wisdom, and that is called wisdom from contemplation or wisdom from thinking. We need to think about what we learned. For example, if we close our eyes right now and think for a moment what Shifu have just explained in the last few minutes, you may remember, you may recall, the name of this sutra is called the Heart of Prajnaparamita Sutra. And the heart means the essence. Prajna is wisdom, a particular kind of wisdom. What kind of wisdom? It can bring us from dukkha to sukha. What is dukkha? What is sukha? All right, you already learned all these things. But if you don't think about it, you may forget in a couple of days, right? If you think about it, you may generate some questions. Okay, according to what Shifu has just said, so this prajna wisdom is capable of bringing us from dukkha to sukha. How does it do that? What exactly do I need to learn to be able to say that I have prajna wisdom? Oh, but there was a hint. Shifu said it is called understanding the empty nature of the body and mind. Ah, yes, that was a hint. So we already learned about this. But because we just learned these on the surface, you may generate more questions than answers. So that's good. It's very good to have questions when you hear something, when you learn something. The questions will push you to understand it deeper. But already we learned a connection between dukkha and sukha. The connection is that we need certain type of wisdom to bring us from suffering or unhappiness to happiness. So it's crucial that we correctly understand what prajna is. But it is doable. Shifu said it is doable. Buddha says it's doable. Is it doable really? Well, you have to judge for yourself. And when you try to judge for yourself, you are thinking, you are contemplating. So when you contemplate on the teaching, you go deeper. You figure out where you did not understand, what further things you need to understand to make everything connect together, to make everything make sense for you. So only through deeper thinking will you gain a second type of wisdom called wisdom from contemplation. Now, the third type of wisdom, wisdom from cultivation. Cultivation means you actually do the Buddhist practice, the spiritual practice. What Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara in this scripture teaches is not just knowledge. We'll bring that into our everyday life. It's something that we do. So we go from listening, thinking, to application, applying that, what we learned, that knowledge, into our everyday life, into our ways of dealing with situation, our ways of dealing with people, coping with misery, coping with challenges, coping with unfriendly people, coping with finding out where true happiness lies. So when you do practice, when you do the cultivation, you will gain an even deeper understanding of the teaching. That's the wisdom from cultivation. Let's give you a couple of examples. For example, swimming. You can learn about how to swim from a text, or maybe from a friend who can explain to you how to swim. You can even study the physics of water and your body composition and understand why swimming works. Why is it possible for us to swim? So that's knowledge. It's knowledge from listening, knowledge from reading. And then you may think about it. Does it make sense? Should I believe that people can swim? So you may go study the physics and you say, oh yeah, it is possible. Theoretically, it's possible. So you go through the thinking, you say, okay, now I choose to believe it. But that doesn't mean you can swim. When you actually go into the water and you feel the water, you see how the water can float you or sink you. You gain experience that you previously do not have from the first two modes of learning. So that's the cultivation wisdom, the insight, the experience, the skill you get from actually doing it. Similarly, with learning to ride a bicycle, driving in the snow. As Shifu is speaking, there's a lot of snow out there, and then the roads can get icy. You may learn about how to drive on icy roads. But then when you're actually on the road, that is a different experience. And you will gain that experience, that wisdom, that skill you will not be able to get by just studying how to drive in the snow. Okay, so these are all physical examples. What about mental examples? Yes, that works the same way. For example, counseling. Somebody who does counseling, who help people dealing with their issues. Now, you may have a specific knowledge you gain from studying in the field, how to do counseling. That's wisdom from listening or reading. And then you may think about it, how this teaching makes sense in the sense that it can actually help people with particular types of issues. So you think about it, you think it through, you connect the teaching together. All right, now you have a very good grasp of the teaching. But when you actually do the counseling, when you actually meet the person you are counseling, one person, two person, after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years, after encountering many different situations, specific cases, you gain that cultivation wisdom. Yeah. Similarly, with a doctor diagnosing illness, similarly with a tutor tutoring students, you can think about it, the 3 modes of wisdom you can gain from that. All right. Now, this is important. This theme of 3 modes of wisdom will come back over and over again. It is very useful in helping us to learn anything. In particular, of course, the Buddha's wisdom. So we encourage you to come up with your own examples of a situation, learning anything. What are the 3 modes of wisdom in that type of learning? Or things you're already familiar with, knowledge, skills you're already familiar with. And you can look back on it and say, okay, how did I acquire the wisdom from listening? How did I acquire the wisdom from contemplation? Did I contemplate on it? Do I have experience using it? Or do I lack experience using it? So if we can use examples to reflect. That way we'll become more familiar with the 3 modes of wisdom. Now, in the line we just talked about, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, while deeply immersed in Prajnaparamita, deeply immersed. What does that mean? That means the Bodhisattva must have first gained an understanding from listening. What does the Bodhisattva learn from? Probably a Buddha. So the Bodhisattva learned from the Buddha about prajna wisdom. So he gained listening wisdom, but then that's not enough. He must have contemplated. Now, prajna is something you do need to think about. You do need to contemplate. It's not like 2 plus 2 is 4. 1 plus 3 minus 2 is 1. It's not something like that where you can understand it immediately and there's no more to understand. Prajna teaching, the Heart Sutra teaching is something you need to listen and think about it frequently. So the Bodhisattva has done that. He thought about it frequently and deeply. And he also practiced it, applied it in his own life, in dealing with all kinds of situations, in dealing with helping other people, in dealing with the challenges that the Bodhisattva himself faces. So because he deeply immersed in the Prajnaparamita, we can think of that as every day of my life, every moment of my life, I am trying to apply that prajna wisdom. And when you do, you are immersed in it. So he's deeply immersed. He used that 3 types of wisdom to achieve great progress in realizing that prajna wisdom. And as a result of doing this practice, this listening, thinking, and application, as a result of that, the Bodhisattva is able to achieve something wonderful, something great. And what is that? It is to understand the nature of suffering. Now, to understand the nature of suffering is to understand what is true happiness. Shifu will explain this in the future. So the Bodhisattva understood the nature of suffering and is able to use his skills to help people, bring people out of suffering. So transcending our suffering. And it is certainly not the case that only the Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara, can do it. You can do it. I can do it. Everybody who is diligent in learning the prajna will be able to, first of all, transcend his or her own suffering. They will be able to transcend their own suffering. And furthermore, they will be able to gradually help others transcend their suffering. To transcend means to go beyond, to throw that suffering behind, throw that dukkha behind. So that's what the paramita part is. Prajna paramita. I can attain prajna wisdom for myself, which means I will be able to leave all suffering behind. I will be able to find the ultimate peace, the ultimate bliss. But that is not enough. It will be even better if I can apply that prajna wisdom to people I encounter, people who are unhappy, people who need help, people who can benefit from this teaching. So I will practice, I will cultivate prajna to help alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings, all beings. And during the course of that, I will gradually become very skillful, eventually perfecting the prajna wisdom. Okay, that was an overview of the Heart Sutra. Let us close our eyes and review in our mind what we have just learned. The heart of Prajna Paramita Sutra, which means the heart of the perfection of wisdom. Now, we as people, we all encounter suffering or unhappiness in life. And this sutra is saying that you can actually end your dukkha, end your unhappiness forever, not just today, not just for tomorrow, not just for this particular situation, but forever. That is called transcending our suffering. And so when we do transcend our suffering, we will be able to attain real happiness, real freedom, liberation, forever. The way to do that is that we need wisdom. Prajna wisdom is the ship that can bring us from the shore of dukkha to the other shore of sukha or liberation. So we will need to understand prajna wisdom. It's the wisdom of emptiness of the self and the wisdom of emptiness of phenomena. We haven't explained what emptiness of the self or phenomena means, the empty nature. But we will. And we also learned about the three modes of acquiring wisdom. What are they? Review in your mind. It is the wisdom from listening, or reading? Is the wisdom from contemplation or thinking on your own? It is the wisdom from cultivation or practice or applying that knowledge. And each mode will deepen your grasp of that teaching. So we should definitely try to apply what we learned in this course to our everyday life, and Shifu will give you questions, assignments, which you may choose to follow. And when you do, you will be able to gain more from this course than just listening.